Chapter 5 The Time Trap. Have fear, we're not dead yet. The girl's lips are pale. Yet I fear this is magic. I'm quite a sorcerer myself, Mason jest with an assurance he does not feel. He has noticed that the dark bulk in the corner is stirring. It arises. Slowly it comes forward into the light. Icy horror chills the man. A centaur, living, breathing, alive, stands before him. A monster out of mythology, sprung to sudden life. The master's surgery has created it, Mason tells himself, yet he cannot force down his repulsion. The creature is monstrous. It has the body of a beast, a dun horse, all caked and smeared with filth. From the shoulders grows the torso and arms of a man, hairy and knotted with great muscles. The head is human, and yet in some indefinable manner bestialized. There is no intelligence in the shallow eyes, but a pale shining of dull hatred and menace. The eyes flicker over him, swing to the girl. Light flares within them. The monster's loose, slobbering mouth twitches. It mouths in unintelligible sounds. The thick arms swing up. It prances forward. Stay behind me, Mason says curtly. The dagger's hilt is cold in his hand. He lifts the weapon. The centaur hesitates, looking down at the man. It seems to sink down, crouching, and then it leaps. It bounds forward, front hoofs flying. Bellowing rage. At that gigantic mountain of flesh crashes down, Mason thrusts up desperately with the dagger. Whether his blow finds a mark he does not know. A hoof smashes against his head, a glancing blow that sends him hurtling back. Stunned, he falls in a limp heap on the straw. Blackness surges up. Frantically he fights it back. His head is a blinding, throbbing ache of red agony, and when he forces open his eyes he cannot focus them properly. Eliza's scream brings Mason back to full consciousness. Unable to move, his muscles water-weak, he lays staring at the horror before him. The man-beast has gripped the girl in its hairy arms. The shallow eyes glare at her. One taloned hand sweeps out, snatching Eliza's garment, ripping it brutally away. Frantically, Mason battles his overpowering weakness, the sickening dizziness that nauseates him. The centaur bellows mad laughter, and again the scream of Eliza comes, terrified, hopeless. The centaur's monstrous head bends. Watery orbs avidly dwell on the girl's nudity. He strikes out vainly, her nails ripping at the creature's face. Though blood comes, the centaur pays no attention to its wounds. Mason manages to crawl dizzily to his feet. The dagger lays glinting in the straw near him. He bends, picks it up, he turns towards the man-beast. Eliza lays pale and motionless in the centaur's arms. The monster has no other thought than the girl. Its eyes are glaring and bloodshot. Spittle drools from the sagging mouth. It does not see Mason as he creeps forward. The man has but one chance, and he knows it. Silently, he steals up behind the beast. At the last moment, the centaur senses danger, starting to whirl, roaring menace. Mason's arms slash down. The dagger rips into the centaur's throat, slicing through skin and flesh and cartilage. A great gout of blood bursts out, spattering the nude girl with scarlet. With a deafening scream of agony, the centaur drops Eliza. Its hands crawl up to its ruined throat. It plunges at Mason. He manages to dodge, though flying hooves graze his side. As the creature lunges past Mason, puts all his strength into a desperate leap. He feels iron-hard flesh under him, comes down on the creature's back, his arms locked around the monster's throat. The dagger is still in his hand. The based man goes berserk. Screaming, it flings back its hands, seeking its prey. The taloned fingers seek Mason's eyes. The man rips out blindly with the dagger. He feels himself flung through the air, falling heavily on his side, rolling over and over. Clashing hooves thunder past. Mason springs up, halts, and staring. The centaur is blind. The dagger's chance stroke had ripped across its eyeballs, slashing them open. The beast's face is veiled in blood, and if the monster has been enraged before, now it is a demon incarnate. Blind and dying, it shrieks mad rage and murder lust, hoofs grinding down viciously on the straw. Great arms swinging, the centaur drives around the den, hunting the man who has slain it. Mason sees Eliza lying nearby. He dashes towards her, lifts her nude body in his arms. He staggers into a corner, and the centaur flashes past him like a juggernaut. It is a mad, fantastic game they play there, with the dying monster blindly seeking prey, and with Mason carrying the girl, dodging and waiting alternately, his breath a raw, singeing flame in his throat. All at once the centaur grows still, its bloody arms hanging laxly, blind head lifted questingly as it listens. The creature stiffens as the girl in Mason's arms moans and stirs. Guided by the sound, it springs forward and drops, dead. It rolls in a gory, shapeless huddle over and over on the straw, the great wound in the throat ceasing to bleed as the mighty beast heart slows and stops. It lay quiescent, dreadful life ending forever. Reaction shakes Mason. Dizzily, he lowers the girl to the ground, relaxes beside her, weak and sick, but after a moment he rallies his strength and turns to Eliza. She is still and white as a marble statue, her pale body splotched with the centaur's blood. Mason's throat is suddenly dry. Is she even alive? Swiftly he chafes her arms, striving to bring back consciousness. And at last the girl's lashes lift golden eyes into Mason's, wide and fearful. With a shuddering little cry, Eliza clings to the man, no longer the queen of a mighty city, but a girl, frightened and thoroughly human. Involuntarily, Mason bends his head, kisses the soft hollow of her throat, her rounded shoulders. A flush turns Eliza's face rosy. She draws away, freeing herself. There ought to be a way out of here, Mason says abruptly, unsteadily. The master depends on the centaurs killing his victims. There'd be no need to make this place a real prison. I'll look around. In a corner, Mason finds a tiny stream that emerges from a hole in the wall and runs along a channel to disappear into a drain. Where the stream emerges, there is a tube that slants up into the darkness. It does not look inviting, but after a careful search of the den, Mason realizes that this is the only means of egress. Want to try it, Eliza? He asks. The girl has been watching him, and now she nods and comes to his side. I'll go first, Mason offers. If I can get through, you'll be able to. He falls on his hands and knees and creeps up to the hole. The water is not deep. It rills beneath him, icy cold and murmuring soft. Mason is in a tunnel, the tube barely wider than the width of his shoulders, so smooth that at times he almost loses his footing. If the slope grows much steeper, he knows it will be impossible to mount it. Behind him he hears the girl, her breathing soft and uneven. The faint light that filters from behind them grows dim and dies away entirely. They clamber through utter darkness. Interminable journey through the hidden heart of Albuquerque. More than once, Mason feels chill despair touch him, but he knows that to retrace his steps will be useless, probably fatal. In the den of the centaur, they would be at the mercy of Nervor and the master, but here they have at least a chance. The tube grows level again. Fumbling in the dark, Mason feels emptiness beside him. The sound of falling water comes. He realizes that the tunnel branches here, forking into two tubes, up one of which they have climbed. He calls, Not too fast, Eliza. Take hold of my foot. Slowly they edge past the unseen abyss, then forward again on hands and knees that are raw and bleeding, on and on interminably, until at last a faint greenish glow heartens Mason. He increases his pace. A mesh grating is set in the tube above him. He fumbles with it vainly. It is fast. With a word to the girl, Mason braces himself, thrusting his back against the barrier. Veins bulge in his forehead as he strains to lift it. There is a faint creaking, but the grating does not give. Mason rests and then tries again. This time he manages to burst open the metal grating. Wearily he lifts his head through the gap, peering around. They're in a room, green-lit and vacant, filled with water tubes, pipes, unfamiliar machinery. Mason wriggles out through the gap he has made, helping Eliza climb free. Both of them are drenched and shuddering with cold. So far, so good, Mason says grimly. Know where we are? The girl shakes her head. Dark hair clings damply to her bare shoulders. The city is strange to me also. I don't know how we can escape or where we can hide. Well, we can't stay here, Mason grunts. Come along. He leads the way to a tunnel mouth in the wall. Warily they hurry along it. Albuquerque is still sleeping, but it would awaken soon, Mason thinks. Moreover, if they encounter one of the robot guards, they no longer have Murdoch's paralysis weapon. Twice they see robots in the distance, but manage to evade them. It seems hours later, when hurrying along a green-lit corridor, Mason hears footsteps approaching. He stops short. Eliza's face is white. She whispers, What? We passed a door a moment ago, Mason says softly. Come on. They run back swiftly. The door is unlocked. Mason swings it open, revealing a tiny closet glistening with switches and apparatus. In we go, he commands. Hope we don't electrocute ourselves. The footsteps are louder. The two tumble into the closet, and Mason draws the door shut. He has intended to leave a tiny crack for vision. but the panel swings closed with a click. In the darkness, Mason fumbles for a latch. There is none. The steps grow louder, hesitate, and fade in the distance. Mason can feel Eliza's warm breath on his cheek. He says quietly, "We can't get out. We're locked in." The girl says nothing for a moment, and then comes into his arms, shuddering with cold and fear, clinging to him. The touch of her cool flesh dries Mason's throat. He resists for briefly, and then a flame of passion sweeps away his caution. His hands touch silken curves. He feels Alyssa's soft lips. They touch his like fire. He draws the girl close. With a little sob, she puts slim arms around Mason's neck. Lips merge, and a trembling shudder shakes Eliza's body as she strains towards him. The footsteps come again and again, sound that electrifies Mason. Soft, furious oaths in a voice he knows, the voice of Eric. The girl hears it too. She draws away, unseen in the darkness. Mason calls with quiet urgency, "Eric! Eric!" Silence. Then the Cimmerian's low tones. "Hey, who's that?" "Mason and Eliza in here." The door swings open. Eric stands wide-eyed, his mouth open. His cloak is ribboned, his swarthy chest bleeding in a dozen places. "I've found you. El-Lil be praised. I've been searching all Albuquerque." He whips off his cloak and gives it to the girl. She nods gratefully, wrapping it around her form. "I've no cloak for you, Mazon, but you'll be back in your apartment in a moment. What happened to you?" Mason tells him. The Cimmerian whispers an oath. "The she-devil Nervor. You saved my life, Mazon, when you cried out for me to use Murdoch's weapon. It gave me enough light to beat off the leopard. I didn't kill it, but I gave the beast some wounds to lick." He grins unpleasantly. "Now listen, Mazon, you, Eliza, I went to Murdoch. I told him what was happening. He said there would be no time for him to talk to you now. Albuquerque will awaken soon. If you live, he said, give you this message. Eliza, I will hide safely. You, Mazon, must pretend to obey the master. Work with him as he wishes. Try to learn his secrets. Murdoch knows something of them, but not enough. Later, Murdoch will join his knowledge to yours, and the two of you, with my aid, may defeat Gredar Clon." Mason nods. "Okay, I mean, it is well, Eric. You say Eliza will be safe?" "For a time. I know the hidden places of Albuquerque. We must hurry, Mazon." The Cimmerian gives Mason explicit directions for returning to his apartment. "Go now, swiftly. Obey the master till you hear from me." Eliza runs to the archaeologist, her golden eyes anxious. "And you will guard yourself for my sake." She lifts her pale face, and Mason kisses her again. He hears the Cimmerian whistle shrill with astonishment. The girl turns to Eric, says imperiously, "Let us go now." Shrugging, Eric leads Eliza along the corridor, his lips still fragrant with the honey musk of the girl's kiss. Mason goes in the opposite direction, smiling a little. As soon as he finds his apartment, the robot guards stand still before the door, unmoving as Mason slips within. He cleans and bathes his wounds as well as he can, donning a cloak that will hide them from the master's suspicious eyes. Then he relaxes on the mound of furs. He sleeps, but not for long. The robot is beside him, gently gripping his arm, urging him to his feet. A little thrill of fear shakes Mason. Has the master discovered what has happened? Has Nervor spoken? No, the Silver Priestess would be silent for her own sake. Reason tells Mason that the master will be merciless if he knows Nervor has tried to kill the man Gredar Clon needs to aid him. With an assumption of nonchalance, the archaeologist accompanies the robot to the room of the green monoliths. The master is reclining on furs. He thrusts a flask at Mason. "Drink," the shrill voice pipes. "It is not a drug, rather a food, neutralizing the toxins of weariness." Mason drinks. His fatigue drops from him. The master makes no reference to Eliza's escape. If he knows of it, which Mason does not think likely, he rises on his bowed legs. "Now we shall begin." The ordeal starts, and it is a racking and cruel one. Mason's brain has never worked so fast, and despite the energizing effect of the liquid, a dull headache begins to oppress him. He can only guess as much of the nature of the work he does. Remembering Eric's command, he tries to memorize his activities and those of Gredar Clon. Under the master's direction, he moves levers, spins wheels, sends light rays impinging on huge machines. From time to time, at the dwarf's dictation, he makes cryptic notations. with a stylus upon a camera-shaped device on which a scroll is wound, a variation on a notebook. And as Mason works, a trickle of knowledge creeps into his brain. He begins to understand some of the machines and power of the master of Albacar. Several times he has attempted to hand objects to the dwarf and has felt an invisible solid repel his hands, a shell of energy, Greta Kalon explains, which protects him from danger. An atomic mesh guarding my body through the interstices of which I can breathe, but which cannot be penetrated otherwise by weapons or rays. The cold eyes examine Mason impassively. Remembering the spear that had rebounded from this invisible armor, the archaeologist realizes its necessity, and as they work, Mason notices several of the transparent ovoids about, similar to the one which had imprisoned Aleza. Several are large, fully 20 feet long. I use them for aerial travel when I have a need to leave Albacar, the dwarf says. One thing Mason learns is that the air pressure within the ovoids can be controlled, increased or decreased. Then he remembers, though at the time he does not realize the importance of the device. I've given the barbarians of Albacar comforts they never knew before, Gredorclan says. Of course, I build the city for my own comfort primarily while I was working on my projector, but they will still have it when I'm gone, though they'll be unable to actuate the machines. Come. He leads the way to one of the ovoids 20 feet long of opaque silvery metal. Gredorclan touches a stud and a disc-shaped door swings open. He motions Mason within, following him. As he turns to the instrument panel, Mason watches his movements closely. The walls of the ship shimmer, fade, become shadowy, transparent. The ovoid lifts and drives up. They race up swiftly beside the giant pillars. At their summit, between them, a platform has been constructed, and on this the ship alights. At a dizzy height above the floor, the work continues, amazingly intricate adjustments and calculations which Mason does his best to understand. And presently the dwarf, his voice emotionless as ever, announces, "It is finished. There remains only one thing." The two were within the ship, but now Gredorclan opens the port. He points to a lever on the platform a dozen feet away. "Pull that over, then return swiftly." Mason obeys. As he returns to the ship, he catches a fleeting glance from the master, curiously veiled, and wonders. The dwarf says, "I have improved my original projector. Watch." Silently, a pale shimmer of white flame begins to spread in empty air between the summits of the green towers. Growing filaments and tentacles like tatters of some huge curtain dance and flutter, spreading, even closing the gap between the monoliths. The green light fades. In the white glare, distorted shadows march grotesquely on the distant walls. Before, I guessed my destination in time. Now I can control it. The energy of the projector is being transmitted to the ship, giving it the power to move in time. Now the white curtain is unbroken, flaming all around the ovoid's transparent walls. Mason's eyes ache as he watches it. Then it snaps out and vanishes. It is gone. Coldly, Gredorclan says, "It is ended. My experiment is finished and successful." He touches the control board. "One test, though. We'll move back in time for one revolution of the Earth." The ship trembles, sways, and suddenly utter Stygian blackness falls, through which screams the vibration of energy inconceivable. End of chapter 5.